Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. Today we have a review of manga chapter 873, Trapped Like Sweets in a Cage, which I believe is some sort of pun on Trapped Like Rats in a Cage. In any case, surprisingly, we're starting this week with the cover story. Now, I haven't touched on what's been happening in the Grand Fleet story for quite some time because, in all honesty, it hasn't been particularly interesting or noteworthy. That all changed this week. While selling Straw Hat merchandise, Bartolomeo has found himself on an island controlled by none other than Shanks. Now, I find this really cool because I don't think we've ever come across an island under the umbrella of the Red Hair Pirates. We've seen or heard of islands under Big Mom's control, Kaido's control, and Whitebeard's control, but never Shanks, and it was starting to get a bit weird, because in theory, he should control an equal amount of territory being a Yonko and all. So all of a sudden, I'm quite keen to see where Bartolomeo's portion of the cover story goes. But let's hop back into Totland, where some pretty awesome things happened this week. Actually, when I think about it, a lot of the chapter was just standing around with the Charlotte siblings and watching them strategize. Which isn't a bad thing, it turns out. A lot of interesting tidbits were dropped, for example, the communications having been cut with the ceremony venue and the hall below. I don't remember if this was ever mentioned during the planning phase by Capone or whoever, but at the very least it now makes sense as to why characters like Baron Tamago or what's his name now? Count Cock, I guess? Anyway, it makes sense as to why they didn't emerge to help fight off the Allied forces at the ceremony. And then we have some cool moments with Katakuri. The first of which is him declaring that he will take the head of Straw Hat Luffy before he becomes an existence that will seriously threaten Mama. This statement is just... wow. The guy with the largest known bounty in the entire series is showing some pretty big respect for Luffy here. Katakuri actually believes that Luffy will become someone capable of bringing down a Yonko. Not necessarily through strength, I imagine, but through everything else that seems to propel Luffy in the series, like his ability to turn almost anyone into an ally and the general aura of luck surrounding him. I think giving a line like this to Katakuri is also quite a clever choice by Oda, mainly because of Katakuri's ability to see into the future. While in the reality of the series, he can only do it for a few seconds, but it's still quite poetic for the future seer to be able to see what Luffy will become. What isn't cool, however, is a very out-of-character moment that happens almost immediately after with Mr. Katakuri. When Smoothie is rushing towards the group to warn them about Big Mom's mood, Katakuri, for whatever reason, asks, "What is it at a time like this?" And it is ridiculous, because as I said before, this guy can see the future. He should be able to see that Big Mom is coming, and it should terrify him. And even if he didn't see that far ahead, if anything, he should have said that line before Smoothie started shouting at them, because he would have seen her shouting at them before she did it. That would have been cool and in character. Alternatively, the line should have just been given to another Charlotte sibling, like Mont d'Or or something. He does a lot of irrelevant speaking, it would have been perfect for him. But it just goes to show that characters who have socially odd powers, like looking into the future, are very tricky to deal with. But Katakuri does bring up another interesting thing, which is the consequences of Big Mom remaining in her tantrum-like mood. He says that at the very least Whole Cake Island will be destroyed, but what happens after that is quote-unquote unknown. I might just be reading too much into this, but I almost feel like this implies that Whole Cake Island might have been destroyed before by one of Big Mom's moods. Or at the very least it was close to being completely destroyed before they fed her whatever she was craving. I don't know, it's just a weird line, and maybe it's because I'm reading a horrible translation that I'm taking more from this than I necessarily should. To answer that thought about the unknown though, prior to this chapter I would have said that it was fairly clear that Big Mom would have been quite powerless after having destroyed her own island, given that she's a Devil Fruit user and would be unable to swim to the next one. However, it turns out that that is completely wrong, as it appears she is able to fly on her cloud Zeus in a very Dragon Ball-esque manner, almost exactly like Goku riding the flying Nimbus. But that amazing image aside, we are presented with a problem. Essentially, if Big Mom doesn't get her wedding cake, then everything goes kaput. The Straw Hats won't escape because Big Mom catches up with them at the end of the chapter, and the actual Big Mom pirates will be annihilated themselves. Speaking of, I think we got our first casualty this chapter. It looks as if Charlotte Opera had his life force sucked out of him by Big Mom, and dare I say it, is dead. Back to the cake, and I mentioned this last chapter, but it's looking almost confirmed now that Sanji is going to make a cake. Head chef Streusen is out of action because, well, he had a horrible fall from the chateau, despite saving everyone else. And Pudding, well, she owns a chocolate cafe, but I don't think she's actually capable of making a wedding cake that satisfies Big Mom. The actual good news about Pudding, though, is it looks like she's still evil, at least I hope so. But yeah, let's be honest, the only person on Whole Cake Island capable of stopping Big Mom's rampage at this point is Sanji. I don't know how he's going to do it. They'll probably flee to Chocolate Town or wherever Pudding is gathering the ingredients, and he'll conveniently step in and make the best damn cake in the One Piece world. And just a couple of other fun things before we end this review. On the final page, it looks as if Big Mom has taken off her pirate hat, which is a rather striking image. Underneath, she's wearing a bandana, which is super piratey, very Jack Sparrow couture. I was hoping this would be for some significant reason, kind of like how Zoro puts his bandana on to mean business, maybe Big Mom takes her hat off to mean business. But if you look at the very last panel of the chapter, which is a close-up of her face, you can see that the hat is back on her head. It was probably just so that it didn't blow off while she was on the Flying Nimbus, or I mean Flying Zeus. Oh, and arguably the best part of the chapter, King Baum is still alive. I really liked that tree dude, and I was quite sad when it looked like he'd been killed, so hooray for King Baum. It did come with a weird revelation, though, that Nami still has half of Lola's Vivia card left, and I feel like that's a bit of poor storytelling, and kind of like a last-minute excuse for the homies not to fight back against the Straw Hats. But I think that about does it for this week's chapter. Some depressing news before we sign off, there will be no chapter next week. And if that isn't sad enough as it is, what's worse is that the week after will be a double issue of Shonen Jump. This means that there will be a chapter that week, but there won't be one the following week. So things are going to feel very slow in the One Piece world for the next month or so, which is an absolute shame considering that we are absolutely rocketing towards a conclusion in this arc. If you just so happen to be looking for a One Piece fix during all that downtime, please feel free to check out some of the other videos on my channel. I have a series called One Piece 101 which breaks down everyone and everything in the One Piece world. I also post theories every Monday, top 5 lists on the weekends, and I've just started a new series called Film Friday, which goes out on, you guessed it, Friday. That essentially consists of retrospective reviews of the entire One Piece film series. I've already done the first film, creatively titled One Piece The Movie, and tomorrow we'll have a review of Clockwork Island Adventure going out. So there's still plenty of stuff happening on this channel, even with the downtime in the manga. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like, favorite, or subscribe. This has been the Grand Line Review, and I'll see you next time.